She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. In a fragile skull, I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know. And she's got me living in a chemical love, and I try to find the strength to know when she comes back to me again. I'm gonna come up from my hiding.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another true crime video. We've talked about Ruby Franke and the 8 Passengers YouTube channel. We did a video on it several months ago after Ruby and her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, were arrested and charged with the abuse of Ruby's 2 minor children, aged 12 and 9. Since then, there have been new documents and evidence released in the case, and it's truly chilling. So for a quick summary of the case, Ruby Franke was best known for her popular YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, where she documented family life with her husband, Kevin, and their 6 children. On December 18th, 2023, Ruby pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. On December 27th, Jodi Hildebrandt, a licensed therapist who ran an online self-improvement program with Ruby called Concoction, she also pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. 4 months earlier, in August of 2023, both women had been arrested after Ruby's 12-year-old son crawled out of a window that was in Jodi's Ivins, Utah home, and he ran to the residence of a neighbor for help. The boy had duct tape on his ankles and wrists, and he appeared to be in a state of malnourishment. It was at that time that the neighbor found out from the 12-year-old that his 9-year-old sister was still in the house, and the boy claimed he had not seen his sister in over a month. The neighbor called 911, and police responded to Jodi's residence, at which time they placed her under arrest and conducted a search of her property, finding Ruby's 9-year-old daughter terrified and hiding in a closet. Also emaciated, also clearly not eating properly and not receiving the proper care that a child deserves to receive. Now, they have released a bunch of new evidence, and amongst the recently released evidence are a plethora of videos, documents, jailhouse phone calls, and journal entries. Oof, the journal entries. Along with this evidence, the Washington County Attorney's Office issued a case summary which said, quote, "The ensuing investigation revealed that Miss Franke and Miss Hildebrandt held Franke's 12-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter in a work camp-like setting." And this is not an exaggeration. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were also prohibited from interacting with others and were hidden in the home when others came to visit. They were forced to do physical tasks like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and sitting against a wall without a chair or stool for hours at a time. The children were also forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat without shoes or socks. They were similarly forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was bound hand and foot after a previous attempt at running away. Additionally, the children suffered emotional abuse to the extent that they came to believe they deserved the abuse. The investigation found that religious extremism motivated Miss Franke and Miss Hildebrandt to inflict this horrific abuse. The women appeared to fully believe that the abuse they inflicted was necessary to teach the children how to properly repent for imagined sins and to cast the evil spirits out of their bodies. End quote. Honestly, it looks like we might have another Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell on our hands. And I never thought I would say this, but Ruby Franke might be worse. Because when you hear about the things she did to her own children, you're going to be shocked, disgusted, and stunningly saddened. And yes, I know that Chad and Lori ended up taking the lives of JJ and Tylee. But I do believe, had these 2 women, Ruby and Jodi, not been stopped, the 12-year-old boy and the 9-year-old girl would eventually have been dead too. That is a true belief that I hold. And I think that law enforcement probably shares that belief, because you'll see in some of these clips that these police officers are absolutely stunned. They are devastated by what they're seeing. And the prosecuting attorney recently did an interview with, I believe it was News Nation, and he said, every single law enforcement officer that's worked on this case has had to go home and take some time for their own mental health because of how devastating it is. We have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. Get mouth-watering seasonal recipes and fresh, pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Whether you're trying to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. And personally, I'm focused on saving money and stressing less right now because my life has drastically changed in these last few months, and I currently find myself with decreased funds and increased stress. Anything to make my life easier right now is a welcome addition, and honestly, HelloFresh has been making my life easier for years. Actually, since 2020, when the pandemic hit, I've been using HelloFresh. So for 4 years, about exactly 4 years now, I was afraid because there was no food in the grocery stores, and I wanted to make sure I could still feed my family, and HelloFresh came in clutch then, and they still do. Each HelloFresh box is packed with farm-fresh ingredients, and everything arrives pre-portioned right to your doorstep for less hassle and less food waste. Now, I personally don't have the time or mental capacity to wander around a grocery store for an hour trying to figure out what I'm going to make for dinner that week while being overwhelmed by all the choices and all the overstimulation of being out in the world. And then I end up leaving the grocery store with a thing of chocolate milk and Rice Krispie treats. Nothing for dinner? Well, with HelloFresh, there's no meal planning. There's no grocery store trips. They do all that for you. It's like having a little personal assistant. HelloFresh gives you exactly what you need for each chef-crafted, mouth-watering recipe. And HelloFresh also sends you a recipe card with step-by-step instructions and pictures, so it's literally impossible to mess up. And I love that they send you pre-portioned ingredients, so you have exactly what you need for that recipe, and you don't have a bunch of stuff sitting in your refrigerator going bad, and then you got to clear it out once a month, and then you're like, this is gross. Why am I doing this? All this food's wasted, all this money wasted, and then you just hate your life that entire day that you're cleaning out your refrigerator. And you don't have to do that because HelloFresh is going to make everything very, very simple. And not only that, but delicious. Every single meal I've ever made with HelloFresh has been delicious. We just made this mandarin orange chicken and broccoli. It was so delicious. It tasted like something you would get in a restaurant. And I made it, so I'm proud of myself. For those of us who are trying to save even more time and energy, we can turn to HelloFresh's lineup of quick and easy meals, including their 15-minute recipes, which are designed to help minimize mealtime stress. And 15 minutes is even quicker than delivery. And when you sign up today, you're going to unlock a free dessert for life. That's right, you heard me right. You can satisfy your sweet tooth with a decadent dessert of your choice in every HelloFresh box for free. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code stephanieharlowe for free dessert for life. I really like that discount code, stephanieharlowe. Yes, she is. You are going to get one dessert item of your choice per box while your subscription is active. So visit my link in the description box below. And once again, that's code stephanieharlowe at HelloFresh.com for free dessert for life. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. And let's dive in. So we are going to go through the timeline of the arrests and the aftermath with this new evidence to guide us and give us more insight and context into not only the bizarre behavior of Ruby and Jodi, as well as, into the condition of Ruby's two children, but we are going to get some context into the why. The why, which there is no why, right? There's no legitimate reason that you would do this to children. But I guess the why, the motive in the, fever dream brains of Ruby and Jodi, why they thought this was acceptable, why they thought this was the only way. So we're going to start with the brave escape of Ruby's 12-year-old son, who's referred to in these documents as RF. Now, because the documents refer to Ruby's son as RF, and Ruby's daughter as EF, they're trying to protect their privacy. However, we have to remember that these two children we're on a very public YouTube channel. There's really no protecting their privacy at this point. Anybody who watched 8 Passengers, and there was millions of subscribers, knows that RF stands for Russell Frankie and EF stands for Eve Frankie. And in the first video, before they had started using their initials, I did use their names because everyone knows their names. And I'm going to continue to use their names in this video for the purpose of clarification and for the purpose of not confusing myself. Unfortunately, that is another downfall of putting your children on a very public platform. When something like this happens, or in any situation, they no longer have privacy. The world knows their names. So RF is Russell Frankie. He's the 12-year-old son. EF is Eve Frankie. She's the 9-year-old daughter. So in this video, you can see that Russell approaches the door of a neighbor. And you can also see that he does this slowly, tentatively. He rings the doorbell and then he waits for someone to answer. And as he stands there, we can make observations about his appearance. The boy looks extremely thin, thin arms, thin legs. He's 12 years old. My son Aiden is 12 years old. When I look at Russell in this video, he looks like he's 8 or 9 because he's so thin, because he's so malnourished. You can also see there's something around his ankles, which we'll find out later is duct tape. And he has shoes on, but no socks. And his clothes are thin and ragged, and they're hanging on his thin frame because they're just too large for him due to the amount of weight that he's lost. There's also what appears to be blood on one of his arms. And this is the first house Russell goes to. So we didn't really know that Russell had gone to a neighbor's house previously before he went to the neighbor that eventually ended up calling 911. So Russell rang the doorbell. When no one answered after the doorbell rang, he knocked on the door. But he does so, once again, very lightly, very tentatively, either because he's too weak to knock harder or because he's afraid of making too much noise and drawing attention to himself. This is a response that no doubt would have been programmed into him, conditioning him to make himself as small and as quiet as possible. So when no one answers the door at this first neighbor's house, Russell leaves and he moves on to another house. And this is the residence where the homeowner would make that well-known 911 call, alerting the authorities to what was happening in Jodi Hildebrandt's house of horrors. At first, when Russell rings the doorbell, he gets some automated response, which is weird. I've never seen that before. He starts to walk away because he thinks, like, the first house, nobody's here, nobody's going to answer. But then the man who lived at the house calls him back and asks what he wants. And at first, the neighbor seems kind of wary. I'm not sure why you'd be so suspicious of a child, but he's like, what do you want? He's like, what do you want, kid? And then Russell gets kind of closer, and then the man realizes, this is a kid who needs help. He's not some rascal.
Answer the door right now, but if you'd like to leave a message, you can do it now.
Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could do 2 favors.
Well, what are they?
Taking me to the nearest police station. Well, actually, just one's fine.
What's going on, son? Have a seat there.
It's personal business.
Have a seat. What's your name? How'd you get here?
I
But he has duct tape around
big
his ankle.
injuries, there's sores around them.
Yeah, there's sores around him. I think the good chance he's been.
He also has
And he has it around his
wrist
ankle.
as well.
I mean his wrist as well. Okay, this boy has been.
Needs immediate attention.
He's,
Oh, you were such a good kid.
this kid has obviously been. I think he's been 2221512. I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and he's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Need someone immediately.
he's hungry, and he said he was carrying his stocking feet, so he escaped.
We need the police here now.
They're on the way.
You know, any allergies
Will
to
do.
that? Okay.
I hear cars, they're not coming in the driveway.
After the 911 call, first responders arrived, and then they loaded Russell into an ambulance. One of the first responders, she begins to cry when she sees the condition that this 12-year-old boy was in.
I'll take more. If you want me to, you send them to you.
Russell was placed in the ambulance so his wounds could be inspected before he would be transported to the hospital. And although Russell's face is blurred, in these videos you can clearly see the wounds on his arms and legs.
Hey, I'm Sergeant Tolber. I'm going to just get a few pictures. Are you okay with that?
How did you get the ropes on you? Who did them? You're not in trouble with me, okay? We're just trying to figure out what's going on. Our main focus right now is you, okay? Who put the ropes on you? Supposed to help you what?
In another clip, a police officer is describing the wounds on Russell in great detail. And I believe the context of this video is that this officer is speaking to someone on the phone because there's no one responding to him, but it sounds like he's having a conversation with someone. So I do believe he was on the phone, but just listen to what he says. And it's going to be hard to listen to. I'm sure it was hard for this person, this police officer, to see and witness, but listen to what he says. Listen to how he describes Russell's condition.
I observed the kid. He was sitting on the chair, had the duct tape and plastic around his ankles. And then he had a long sleeve shirt on. And then we pulled his sleeves up, and he had duct tape and clear plastic underneath the sleeves on both wrists. And then medical got there. They started cutting the stuff off him, and then you can see like the dark around his ankles, and it you could smell it, the flesh. It's underneath the tape. As soon as they took it off, you can, even outside, you can smell. You could smell the flesh. And then put him in the ambulance. I went in there. They started cutting more off of it. You can see the wounds on the back of his ankles, around the front of his ankles, and then on his wrists as well. And the wounds around his ankles were dark and like, I don't know, like wet looking, I guess, from the moisture underneath it. Yeah, he said he was tied on the ground with a rope. That's where the wounds came from. Yeah, with ropes on all four of his extremities. And that's where the wounds came from. And then they put cayenne pepper mixed with honey, he said, on the wounds, and then covered that with the plastic saran wrap and then the duct tape over the wounds. Yeah. And then that's what we cut off, was that. Yeah, they dressed the wounds. Some of the wounds, when I was in there, when they went to go peel it, they thought it was some of the dressing. It was actually his skin that was.
So that was hard to hear, and I want to address a few things. Russell told the police that his mother and Jodi had attempted to treat his wounds with a paste. This paste was made of cayenne pepper and honey. Apparently, Jodi and Ruby had covered Russell's wounds with this paste, and then they put plastic wrap over the paste, I guess, to cover it. And I'm not sure if the cayenne pepper and honey paste was intended to treat the wounds or to make them worse. Because while both of these ingredients do have natural healing properties, and they're like anti-inflammatory, allegedly, cayenne pepper also contains something called capsaicin. Therefore, it's important to apply it with caution and only on small wounds, unbroken skin. You should not be applying cayenne pepper or capsaicin of any kind to deep or serious wounds, which inarguably that child showed he had. Mount Sinai Hospital in New York specifically says to not apply capsaicin on open wounds or broken skin because it'll make it worse. Additionally, towards the end of that clip, we heard the police officer mention that while the dressings on the wounds were being removed, a layer of something came off. And initially, they thought that it was just more gauze and plastic wrap, more covering of the wound. But then they realized that it was Russell's skin. Now, inside the house, officers would locate a jar of the skin-burning concoction. That's what they've started calling it, a skin-burning paste. And the jar had a spoon inside of it, along with 2 used medical gauzes. So what Russell said to the police was verified with this jar of cayenne pepper and honey found inside next to medical gauze. Next, we'll move on to the body camera footage of Jodi Hildebrandt being taken into custody. And compared to the previous clips we have just seen, it's kind of the levity break that we all needed. She answers the door all cocky and confident, entitled, some might say. She tells the police what she's going to do, and she tells the police what's going to happen. She's demanding answers. She's like, you can't come in here. I'm on the phone with my lawyer. And then they just yanked her ass out of the house, right? And she was scandalized. She was clutching her pearls. Her entitled and self-absorbed soul could literally not handle the reality of the situation. She could not imagine a world where she's not able to control, manipulate, and navigate the situation with tactics of basically mental abuse. That's Jodi's specialty.
Jodi, I need you to step out.
I have my attorney.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house.
Step out of the house.
Whoa.
We're just going to see if
Whoa, whoa.
is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
They come into my house.
So have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there. I'll explain everything after. Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant, sir?
Control 12X11. Can you hold the air? We're searching the house.
I can tell you what's in the house.
Okay. Just have a seat right there for me.
Do you have a search warrant?
We'll explain it after this.
You can't just come into my house without a search warrant.
We'll explain everything after this, ma'am. Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons why we're here. So we'll explain after everything's done, after we clear the house and make sure everything's fine in there.
But why are you coming into my house without a
We'll
search warrant?
explain it after this.
But that doesn't make sense. You come into my house and do what you want, and then you tell me you don't have a
No,
warrant?
we'll explain why we did.
But don't you have to have a warrant?
Not at this moment, we don't. We're here on exigent circumstances. And I'll explain it after this, after my sergeant and the officer are done clearing the house.
So you hear Jodi asking continually, do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? And no one really gives her an answer, and nobody really gives a shit that she's asking because, frankly, they don't have to have a warrant. They don't have to. In the situation of suspected child abuse, and not just suspected child abuse, like they just can't, the police can't just break into your house if they suspect child abuse is happening. But the fact that they had Russell in the ambulance already, telling them what had happened and telling them that his sister was still inside, the police don't need a warrant for that. They can go in to do a safety, a welfare check. They can go in and make sure that, everything's okay, everything's easy peasy. And like I said, I think that having one child sitting in an ambulance, starving, terrified, covered in wounds, that's enough of a reason to bust into Jodi's house and not give her a ton of consideration in the process. And you can hear as this police officer's talking to Jodi, other police officers are inside the house. They're talking to each other. They're going room by room. They're clearing the house. And they're looking for Russell's 9-year-old sister, Eve, as well as any other children that could be potentially abused and hidden inside.
Is there anybody else in the house?
Yes.
2 kids?
There's a little girl.
Just one?
She's right over here.
Okay. How old is she?
She'll be 10 next week.
Okay. And she's on this side?
Mm-hmm. I have Airbnb guests over there. Probably scared me to death.
Okay.
The literal audacity of this woman, Jodi Hildebrandt, talking about her Airbnb guests being scared when she's been torturing 2 children in her house for no less than 8 weeks straight. The audacity of her to even have Airbnb guests in her house while she's doing this to Russell and Eve. Now, inside the house, law enforcement did eventually locate 9-year-old Eve. She was cowering and scared inside of a closet. It looked like it was a closet off of a bathroom inside one of the many rooms of this home. And although many different people tried to speak to Eve, she wouldn't say a word. So initially, Sergeant Tobler, he's a man, he speaks to Eve, she won't talk to him. Then they bring in a female paramedic, the same one who I believe was crying when she saw Russell. Eve won't talk to her either. And it's really devastating to see a child like this because Eve is at the point where she's been so hurt. She's been so mentally and emotionally and physically abused. She can't even trust adults anymore. She can't trust anybody because if your own mother could do what Ruby did to Eve and to Russell, then how can you trust any grown-up? How can you?
You come in, my buddy. I'm a police officer. Are you going for the union here? Hey, you okay? Is it just you in here? I'm Sergeant Tobler. What's your name? I just have one. Where's your sister at?
Contact 1.
You okay? Huh? You doing okay? You don't want to talk to me? Yeah, that's okay. Can you come with me though? We got Jodi out here. You know Jodi? She's outside with us. You take your time, bud. I'm in no hurry. I'm a police officer. Did you know that? I don't mean to hurt you at all.
Now, initially, you can hear Sergeant Tobler refer to Eve as Bud and then ask her where her sister is. And that's because Tobler initially thought that Eve was a boy because she was so thin and because her hair had been cut very short. And that's something we're going to talk about in more depth later on, the hair cutting.
I'm not going to hurt you. Promise. See this right here? It's a badge. It tells me I don't hurt people. I'm just here to make sure you're okay. You're in no way in any trouble. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're okay. And I get if you're scared. I would be too. Okay? You want to come with me?
Not only is this little girl not talking, but she's not even moving. She's sitting in the same exact position. She's not reacting to anything. It's almost as if she's completely disassociated, which makes a lot of sense considering the literal hell she'd been living in for months and the unthinkable things she'd been exposed to, the incredibly traumatic statements made to her and about her coming from the mouth of her own mother. Once again, we're going to talk about the things that Ruby said to her children, the things she told them about themselves. The fact that she brainwashed them and broke them down so completely that, as the police stated, they thought they deserved this abuse. So like I said, one of the female EMTs, she attempts to speak to Eve, but she also fails to get a response.
We helped your brother, and we got him some help too. And that's what we want to do for you. Is we want to get you some help too. We are safe. we will not hurt you, and we won't do anything to hurt you. You don't want to talk? Okay. There's nothing at all you want to talk about at all? It's okay to talk to me.
Eve is then brought some food, and it's placed in front of her, and for several minutes, she still doesn't move. She's staring at the food as if it's some kind of cruel joke or some kind of vicious ploy. And the second she reaches out for it, she would be punished. She won't eat the food even though she's hungry. Now, after I think 10 or 15 minutes, Eve did end up eating, and she ate an entire pan pizza, and then she ate half of a large pizza. And eventually she allowed first responders to bring her to the ambulance 4 hours after they'd found her in the closet. That's how nervous and scared and distrustful Eve was. That's how mentally broken she was. That's how little she believed the word of any adult at this point. 4 hours she sat there without saying a word before allowing herself to be removed from that house of horrors. And even then, I'm not sure if she started talking, started opening up. I really think about Russell and Eve, because this is so much of the focus is on them, and so much of, what we're talking about right now is about them. But once again, we're going to start talking about Ruby and Jodi and Kevin, and these two kids are going to get a little bit lost in the narrative that we're going to discuss for the rest of this video. I think about them and I hope that they're doing okay now. I hope that they've had therapy and have had the chance to heal and have started building themselves back up and allowing trusted adults to help them build themselves back up. Meanwhile, outside the house, the Ivins' house, Jodi Hildebrandt is still clutching her pearls and pretending she has a leg to stand on. A police officer who was searching the house, he approached her. He asked her if, she was still on the phone with her lawyer before telling her that they'd found a room in her house that they couldn't access. So they were going to start the process of getting a search warrant for that room. Body cam footage shows that this room is actually more of a, closet, like a large closet. It's the size of a large walk-in closet, and it's hidden behind what looks like a safe door, as in a gun safe or a bank safe door. And as of now, I would say it's unclear whether this room was used to hold Eve and or Russell in. However, we can hear the police talking about it, and an officer on the scanner directs the other law enforcement agents to this room, saying, quote, he said it's downstairs under one of the garages and he's calling it a safe room. He said something about Fort Knox, end quote. So if the he that this police officer is referring to is Jodi's 12-year-old son, Russell, then it makes sense that the children were either locked inside of this room at some point, or they were shown the room as a scare tactic to make them behave. So this $3.5 million desert home in Ivins was built to Jodi Hildebrandt's specifications, and that safe room is located in the basement beneath the garage. The outside of the door looks like you might need a PIN code to access it, and inside there's a room that's pretty much empty besides a few pieces of furniture. There's a Murphy bed, which is like a fold-out bed. There's some cabinets, a microwave, toilet, an empty refrigerator, a sink, and some cleaning supplies. Honestly, when I first saw it, I said, this kind of looks like a break room at your job. So let's say you work at Walmart or something and you have a break room. It kind of looked like that. There's cabinets and a sink, a countertop, a little refrigerator, a microwave, and then obviously the bed wouldn't be in a break room. I guess it depends what kind of job you had, and then the bed. So inside the cabinet in a bottom drawer, police located a long strand of rope with knots, and tied to one end, there were thick metal chains linked to a set of handcuffs.
We're hearing from a former FBI agent who says it's likely the children were held in that vault.
I think we expected that safe to be open, and to me, it looked like a closet gun safe, basically, is what I was expecting sort of on the other side of that. Lots of people have them, particularly in the basements of their homes, to hold long rifles and multiple weapons and those kinds of things. I did not expect to see a full sterile room, I guess, on the other side of it. And not just a full room, but a room equipped with plumbing, kitchen, running water, and a bed.
Walder calls the room itself unusual.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say it's common to have a safe like this. They're very expensive, actually. They're not, cheap safes. So it's typically a floor to ceiling safe like that. I wouldn't say it's the most common type of safe. I have a safe in my home and it's not that. But I've seen them before to hold, weapons mostly. But I think safe rooms, depending on where you live, are not necessarily uncommon. I live in Tornado Alley and people do have them, but they're not rooms that are designed like that, which is designed to, I guess, sustain life for prolonged periods of time. In safe rooms in homes from tornadoes, weather, those kinds of things, they're just designed for you to be in there for a matter of hours to stay safe and then emerge. This had full support of life in it, basically, for however long was intended. Like I said, running water, bathroom facilities, a bed, a refrigerator. That is for someone who's planning to live there over a prolonged period of time. And that is highly unusual.
They go through all of these drawers and cupboards and things, and most of them are empty. Why is it that most of them wouldn't have anything inside of them?
Well, obviously, there's two explanations for that, in my opinion. I think the first is that maybe it hadn't been used in quite some time. But I also think, too, if this was designed as a form of punishment, they're going to have the bare minimum in terms of essentials in there. This isn't a time for someone to eat the food that they want and be able to do the things that they want in terms of entertainment. So I think that might be why as well.
So at first I was like, well, maybe the kids weren't held in this room. Maybe this is a sort of like a safe room, a panic room. Jodi and Ruby are super religious. They might believe in the rapture, the apocalypse, something like that. Maybe they have this room to go into. But then why was the refrigerator empty? Why was there no food in there? Why were the cabinets empty? No food in there. Why was there a set of handcuffs attached to metal chains? If I'm looking at this objectively and I'm looking at it with the details of what was happening to those kids in that house, they probably were put in that room, but I guess only time will tell. Now, at the same time that Jodi Hildebrandt was being arrested, Ruby Franke was receiving a visit from law enforcement, and her behavior is so bizarre. I just can't figure out what her plan was. Like, what is your end goal here? What is your hope to achieve from this situation? Because Ruby says nothing to the police, not one word. And she does this throughout every step of being arrested, questioned, transferred to jail, and processed.
Okay, just place your hand on your back for me. Perfect. And then right now I can put a finger in each of these, okay? And I'm just going to double up those so they don't tighten up on you on the way out there. You don't have anything on you that I should know about, correct? Any weapons, anything that we're going to find. Before you put you in a police vehicle, we need to search your person to make sure you don't have anything on you. Is there anything you have on you? Okay, I'm going to search you before we put you in his car. That's just protocol, so I'm just going to have you step right over here and then just widen your legs, widen your stance. Yep, perfect. Are you wearing a bra? Okay, I'm just going to go like this through and make sure you don't have anything. You said you're not wearing a bra? Okay. Alright, you're just going to walk with Officer Hines.
No bra, that's fine.
And then, hey Hines.
You want me this way or that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you want to go down the downstairs into the interview room downstairs.
Sounds good.
You going down or I'm going down?
I could show you all the clips where Ruby is not talking to the police officers, even though they're directing questions at her, because there's a lot of them. And at one point, one police officer he's like laughing a little bit because he's so ridiculous. He doesn't know what to do. And he's like, I just need to make sure there's nothing wrong with you, like medically or mentally. And at that point, she's like, no, I'm fine. Or she just nods or something and she acknowledges him. So at least we know she can hear him, but she just doesn't talk to them, doesn't answer any of their questions.
Grace, you want to let you know what criminal charges for, so you're under arrest. It's going to be 2 counts, second-degree felony of child abuse or neglect, okay? Do you understand that or no? Are you okay? I'm wondering if there's like a medical clearance that needs to, like, do you need medical attention before you go to the jail? Okay.
And during Ruby's police interview, she also had literally nothing to say.
We're just here to talk to you about kind of a few things involving your kids. So first, do you live down here, or do you live up north? Do you want to talk to me about where you live, or how many kids you have? So we just spoke with your husband, and he said you guys have 6 kids. Are those all together? Are those all your kids? I can wait all day, so it's up to you if you want to talk to us about what's going on. Would you feel more comfortable talking to one of us?
Or do you want me to, I can step out if you want?
Or if you feel more comfortable talking to him, I can step out.
I'll wait till I have a lawyer.
Okay. So you don't want to talk to us at all?
So yeah, this is just your chance to tell us. We're just trying to get your side of the story. So it's your chance to do that. But it's up to you. We're just here to talk. And I mean, I'm not asking any criminal questions. If you don't want to talk to us, just let us know and we'll be done.
I've already told you.
That you want a lawyer? Okay.
Okay.
Easy enough.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can get you for you in the meantime? I got the water. Do you need a bathroom break or anything like that? No? Okay. Good.
But Jodi Hildebrandt was much more chatty during her police interview, which is going to give us more material to discuss.
I'm a little nervous.
You're to be honest with you, if I was sitting over there, I'd be a little nervous too. So don't worry about it. We're just here to talk, to get your side. And right now we're just asking you.
Do you want to talk to me about where you live, or
lived here,
how many kids you have?
I watched Too Many Detective movies.
Have you?
Which one's your favorite? So we just spoke with your husband.
You can't, honestly.
You guys have 6 kids.
I sit there and I'm married and I sit there and watch those with
together?
my wife and I say that.
Are those all your kids?
That's not how we do it. That's not right. So don't take. There's some good ones out there. Don't get me wrong, but most of them are probably a little.
I can wait all day.
We're not as mean. I won't get up and beat you.
It's up to you if you want to talk to us about what's going on. We just want to get to know you a little. So if you just kind of want to share a little about yourself and what brought you down here. Would you feel more comfortable talking to one of us?
So I trust my attorney. He said, don't say anything. And I said, I have nothing to
Or
hide.
if you feel more comfortable talking to him, I can step out.
So I'll wait till I have. You guys seem nice people.
Yeah.
I'm not
So you don't talk to us at all.
difficult. This is really, if you knew all the pieces, I think you'd have a lot of empathy for what's going on.
That's what we're looking for. And you're an adult, and the thing about our interview, if we ask you any questions that you don't want to answer, you can just tell us, I don't want to answer that question. But we do want to have a basis and an understanding of what's going on in that home, or what went on up north that brought them into your home. And so if you want to share any of that and you don't want to answer any other questions, that's okay.
So it's your chance.
I'd like to just tell you, but I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're gonna flip my words. I don't know.
And that's the good thing about cameras. Everything, it's pretty much double recorded, audio, video, and it's for the safety for you and for us, because we don't want to flip your words. And this will all be pretty much right there to support you. So we're not going to use anything against you.
He's so insistent, man. He's an honest, good man, goes to church. I trust him. Why would he say that to me then?
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can get for you in the meantime? Be honest.
Well, I'm just saying he's a good, honest man. And I'm an honest person as well, so we get along great. And he just said, do not say anything.
Maybe just as an attorney,
They always say that.
they always want to be with their client. I'm not sure, but like I said, at any time, if you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to. So the ball's really in your court on what you do want to answer and what you don't. So,
well, I think it looks bad that I don't want to answer anything, but it's not because I'm trying to be difficult. I'm really hanging on what he told me to do.
Yeah, who's your attorney?
Adam, his father's an attorney, his brother's an attorney.
Is he local?
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, Adam.
He's down the street where the town hall is. They all have the same name.
It's funny because Jodi says she trusts her attorney. He's a good man, a church-going man, honest like she is, right? She's like, that's why we get along, because we're both so honest. Yeah, you're honest. You're honest, all right. So she's got all these great things to say about him, but she actually couldn't tell you what his name is, okay? She just knows he's a good man because he's honest and he goes to church. But what's his name? What do you need to know that for? Why do I need to know his name to know he's a good, honest, church-going man?
The whole reason we're sitting here today is there's a lot of questions we have that we just maybe misunderstandings that we just need to clarify. And
I know, and I'd love to tell you if he were here, because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with what I say. You know, I'm a psychologist. I've watched people flip things all the time. So I get it. I sit on your side. I get it. I wish people didn't do that, but they do.
I love Jodi's tactic here because she's trying to relate to the police officers. She's playing the whole, I'm a good person and I'd love to be cooperative card, but I'm also a smart person, a psychologist. I'm just like you, officer. I've been where you are. I've been on the other side of this table. I know how easy it is to twist someone's words, which is funny because she does twist people's words. She twists people's minds up. You know, we're going to figure that out when we hear from Kevin Frankie. But she's basically telling on herself. And people like this will tell on themselves. If you give them enough rope to hang themselves, they will. And she's saying, I've been where you're sitting now. I know how easy it is to twist words. I know how easy it is to misrepresent what the person across from you is saying. And it's giving superiority complex. It's giving, I'm a nice white woman with money and an education, and I don't belong here. Well, how did I get here? I should be on the other side of the table with you. I have no idea how I got here, but trust me, if this were a perfect world and you knew everything that I knew, we wouldn't be in the situation. You'd understand exactly why I did what I did. It's so manipulative and it's very covert manipulation. It's very clear to tell what she's doing because we know what she did and we know who she is. And we played clips of her and Ruby talking in circles in the first video that we did on 8 Passengers and Ruby Frankie. So we just know these are her tactics. But if you're dealing with somebody like this for the first time, you can sometimes be thrown off and you can sometimes feel like, wow, they're saying this with just such confidence. They're saying this with such authority. She seems like a nice lady. She seems intelligent. She's well-spoken. She seems to want to cooperate. You know, she seems like she thinks we're nice. She's nice. What's going on here? You may be taken in initially if you don't know everything that's going on beneath the surface.
Well, if you're not willing to answer any of the questions about yourself, would you be willing to answer any questions maybe about Ruby or Kevin that you could help us understand? We just honestly want to understand what their dynamic is, what happened to the children, what caused their separation. Right. And after talking to Kevin, it sounds like you know a lot about their dynamic and their relationship. So if you could help us understand that at the least, that would be awesome. And that's nothing incriminating towards yourself because it's not pertaining to you. So if you could help us understand that.
Jodi, we're going to do this. You asked for your attorney, and we'll leave it at that. We'd like to maybe talk to you later when you have your attorney here present.
Absolutely.
And we'll go
he
down
made
there.
an appointment at 4 on
He made
Friday.
An appointment
here
here at 4.
He talked to the officer.
Okay.
And said, "Can we make a time?" And he said out loud, "Do not talk to them."
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll talk and see if we can schedule that, and maybe that's just something we just do with your attorney. Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions for us or anything we can answer in the meantime?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Appreciate your time. We'll have you hang tight in here, and then we'll come back and get you, and we'll be on our way, okay?
Like I said, Jodi's acting as if she would love to talk to the police. She would love to. She would love to tell them everything because then they'll understand, you know, and it's frustrating for her that because of her lawyer's advice, she's unable to. Once again, this is manipulation, in case any of you didn't recognize it, but you're all smart people. Maybe not as smart as Jodi Hildebrandt, but smart all the same. So I'm sure you did pick up on it. Now we're going to move into the police interview with Kevin Frankie. And he sat down with the Santa Clara Ivans Police Department on August 30th, 2023. And it's a doozy. For the life of me, I cannot figure out if he was complicit in what happened to his kids, or if he was brainwashed by the Jodi and Ruby cult, or if he's just a weak man who was offered a way to not carry the day-to-day responsibilities of caring for his children, and he took it and never looked back.
We're just kind of asked you a few questions about your involvement. Okay, what's a good address for you?
I'm not comfortable giving my address right now.
Okay, but you do live in Springville?
I do.
How long have you lived in Springville for?
I moved there in 2007 with my family, so
and how many?
17 years.
17. And how many kids do you have, Kevin?
I have 6 kids.
I can't remember.
Some of them are teenagers, 2 adults.
So are they all living with you, or?
No, I haven't seen them for over a year.
Any of them?
No, none of them.
For a year?
Over a year.
So listen to what Kevin's saying. Kevin says he hasn't seen a single one of his children for over a year. And even the detective is having a hard time wrapping her head around that one. She had to repeat it to make sure she heard right. You haven't seen your children for a year? There's really no legitimate reason that a father, or a mother for that matter, should go any extended period of time without seeing their children unless that parent has been found to be a danger to the child. And in that case, there would be a court order reflecting that. But according to Kevin Frankie, it wasn't a judge or a law enforcement official who told him he couldn't see his children. It was his own wife.
I've been in a separation.
From who?
From my wife and family.
What's your wife's name?
Ruby.
Ruby. When's the last time you saw Ruby?
The last time I saw her was the 18th of this month. We met to, she requested me to sign over vehicles, or the titles to the vehicle that she drives, that were all in my name.
When's the last time you physically saw Russell or Eve?
The day that I moved out, July 24th, 2022.
24th of 2022?
Or July 25th, July 25th.
So it's my understanding that at least home here in Kayenta and Ivans, have you been to that home?
No.
You've not been to that home?
No, I don't know. I don't know what's anything that's been going on.
Like, this is good, man. Like, I would love to be able to help you out with this, and like, I'm seeing the light of being at home because I'm unaware of your involvement in what's really going on. So for you to say that you're unaware of the status of your kids kind of makes, I know that sounds kind of crummy to you, but it sounds kind of good to me. Like, who lives in that home with your, is it ex-wife? Is it currently a separated wife? Like, who lives in that home with your children?
To be honest, I don't know. I know that she's there with 4 of the children, and our 2 older children have moved out.
They're not at your home in Springville? And I'm not trying to trip you up. I can see you're hesitant to talk to me. I understand that.
Well, where I live, no, I haven't seen them for over a year.
Okay. That's tough. I can only imagine how that feels, man. I got kids. And not seeing them for that long, that would tear a little piece of my heart out.
The male detective is funny too, because he's like, to hear you say you have no idea what's going on with your kids, well, that sounds really horrible. But if it is true, at least it means you didn't have an active part in what was happening to them. Like silver lining. The detective's trying to find the silver lining to Kevin being, kind of a bad father in this situation. And Kevin says that his wife Ruby, who he has seen as recently as that same month, she lives with their 4 younger children while the 2 older children have moved out. Moved out. Another way to say they escaped and ran for their lives, I guess. Now, obviously, we know that Eve and Russell were at Jodi Hildebrandt's home in Ivins, but Kevin seems to think that the 2 older children were also living with Ruby, his wife, and they would have been with Ruby wherever she was. But that's not the case, because according to documents, the Utah Division of Child and Family Services first requested that the Springville police search for Ruby's 2 middle daughters at the Frankie home on the afternoon of August 30th, because the authorities couldn't find these 2 other children anywhere. And Ruby was playing mute, so she wasn't telling anyone their location. And officers spent several minutes outside of Ruby's house knocking on the door, but no one answered. And they said the home's windows were covered by blinds and curtains, so they couldn't see inside. After getting a warrant, police broke through the front door, but they found the house empty. The oldest Frankie child, Sherry, she'd arrived at the home of a neighbor while all of this was going down. And remember that Sherry was the one who's been screaming from the rooftops for years that something's going on in her family. Something that was dark and nefarious was going on with the Frankie family. Because in September of 2022, Sherry had called the Springville police. Springville is where Ruby Frankie lived. That's where her house was located. And Sherry had asked them to check on her 4 younger siblings who were still in the home with their mother. That was when Ruby had left her children alone for days on end, and neighbors reported that the kids would usually hide in the house, but they would sometimes walk around outside looking for companionship and human connection, but they were always alone. They were unmonitored. The police had gone to the house at that time, but no one answered the door then either. However, remember, the police reported they could see in through the windows, and they saw the kids run upstairs with a phone, most likely calling their mother. So on August 30th, 2023, Sherry helped police search for the 2 missing children, her 2 sisters, and she told the police that one of her sisters might be at a nearby recreation center. So when the police contacted this establishment, they were told that there'd been a family emergency and the girl had been picked up. Police also checked the apartment of the oldest Frankie's son, Chad, who was 18 and living in Provo, Utah at that time, but the girls weren't there, and Chad didn't want to talk to law enforcement. Honestly, this poor kid probably just wants to move on with his life and forget that he ever knew his parents, and forget that 8 passengers ever existed, honestly. So the girls, the 2 missing daughters of Ruby and Kevin Frankie, they were eventually found 250 miles away from Ruby's Springville home in a place called American Fork. And they were in the care of a woman who'd picked them up from that recreation center. And this woman was a friend of Ruby's, but also a colleague at Connections. Now, this woman told the police that Ruby had contacted her around noon and asked her to pick up the girls. And this woman also said it wasn't an odd request for her to be asked to bring the girls home with her, because she often did this. And when she brought the girls home with her, they would do housework and chores at her house. So Ruby was literally and actually trafficking her own children, loaning them out to her employees to act as little unpaid maids. It's really hard. It's hard to believe that somebody would willingly become a parent and then treat their most precious resources, their children, like this. So the girls were spoken to on the front porch of this woman's home, and DCFS told them they were going to go with their sister, Sherry, for a bit. But the girls said they wanted to remain with the woman who had picked them up. Now, clearly, in my opinion, these 2 children have been brainwashed. They've been told terrible things about their sister. They've been told terrible things about the police, law enforcement. They've been told terrible things about anyone who didn't follow and preach the Connections mission statement of endorsing and encouraging child abuse in all of its forms. Because when a police officer and a DCFS agent tried to search one of the girls' book bags, she got upset. She became defiant, the police report said, and told them that they would need a warrant to do that. So, I mean, sounds like Jodi, and probably also Ruby if she'd opened her mouth and said 2 words when the police were there. Now, Kevin Frankie can sit here and act like he's innocent and that he stayed away from his wife and kids because they were better off without him. But I don't think he's as innocent as he proclaims to be. Because 2 days after his daughter, Sherry, helped police find her sisters, he attempted to get her arrested, his own daughter, claiming she'd broken into the Springville home and that she wasn't supposed to be there. Kevin, aren't you not supposed to be there? Like, you don't live there anymore, dude. You haven't seen your kids in a year. You haven't been in that house in a year. So who are you to talk about this? And remember, this is after Kevin's already been interviewed by police, after he's been told that his children are in protective custody because they've been abused. You'd think he'd be trying to mend fences with his children. You know, apologize to them for being negligent, for letting their mother treat them the way that she did. But instead, he's trying to have his daughter, Sherry, arrested and charged with burglary. Kevin told police that he believed the house had been broken into because the door had been kicked in and several electronics were missing, and he said these electronics contained his journals. He told the police that he suspected Sherry was responsible because she'd made an unspecified court hearing that day. The police were like, no, dude, your 20-year-old daughter didn't kick down the front door of your house. The police did. You know, when we were trying to save your children from the abuse you let their mother put on them constantly, day in and day out. But Kevin Frankie would not be deterred, because when the police told him Sherry had been inside the home on August 31st to get a few belongings for her sisters, Kevin said Sherry wasn't allowed to be there. He felt she had entered unlawfully, and he wanted her arrested and charged with burglary. The police documents state that the officers once again told Kevin that Sherry had been given permission, allowed by law enforcement, to go into the house to retrieve necessary items for her sister. But Kevin Frankie, quote, did not seem to think it was relevant, end quote. So Kevin made the police contact Sherry and have her return the items, which included passports for Ruby, for Kevin, and for Chad, Sherry's 18-year-old brother, along with 3 tablets, 3 cell phones, 3 cameras, and a stack of written journals. Now, am I going to say that the passports of Ruby and Kevin Frankie were necessary for Sherry's 2 young sisters? No, obviously not. But I think in Sherry's head, she's considering, what are these people capable of? Like, what have they already done? What are they capable of? She's lived with her parents for almost her entire life. She knows what they're capable of, or at least she knows the depths they can sink to. So maybe she's thinking, I want to take my mother and father's passports so they cannot make off with the children that are still in their care, so they can't, leave and escape responsibility and the repercussions for what they've done. Sherry told the police that she didn't intend to take the items to deprive her father of them, and the police told Kevin that they would not be recommending that any charges be filed against Sherry. And according to the police reports, quote, Kevin was displeased with this answer and advised we would be hearing from his attorney, end quote. I love it, man. These people hide behind their lawyers always. Bad people hide behind their lawyers. Obviously innocent people do too, but we know that Ruby and Kevin aren't fully or wholly innocent in any way, shape, or form. What I'm curious about is, what was in those journals that Kevin Frankie didn't want anyone to see? That's the question I want answered, and I hope that if Sherry did read them, she made copies or took pictures of any relevant or damning entries that suggested Kevin might have known what was happening with his children. Now let's go back to Kevin Frankie's police interview, which happened just days before all of this went down. Like I said, just a few days before he's trying to have his daughter arrested, he's sitting in there being like, I just want my family back. I just love them so much. Oh, I miss them. I want to be a good father. I have a picture of them in my office and I work hard for them every day. So anyways, Kevin claims he got a message telling him to come get his kids from the police station in Ivins, Utah. And he says he would prefer to not answer the question of who it was that reached out to him.
Like I said, I know nothing that's going on in their lives or anything going on.
How did you find out that you needed to come here to 55 North Main Street?
I received a message that I needed to come pick up my kids from the police department in Ivins.
And who was that message from?
Well, I prefer not to say right now.
It would just help us a lot.
I'll try to figure out who reached out to you, because it makes sense that would happen. I'm just not aware of anyone who did that from our department.
Right. And I'm not comfortable saying right now who reached out to me.
Okay.
Okay.
So You haven't seen any of your kids in over a year, you said.
That's correct.
And then, how old last time you saw her? How old is she now?
15.
She's 16. Okay. And then when all the kids left, Ruby took all of them?
Yes, she stayed in the house and I moved out.
Okay. And did you ever try to reach out to the kids, drop by the home, or was there?
I honored the no separation boundary that we agreed to.
So, what was your separation?
Contact boundary, excuse me.
Did you have a no contact order in place?
Order? No, this was between my wife and I.
So, what did Ruby ask of you when you separated?
What did she ask of me?
Did she ask you not to contact the kids?
Ruby invited me to leave the home while I thought about the choices that I've made in my life and the way that I've treated her.
Okay.
And so I left.
Why can he not answer a question directly? Kevin's asked if Ruby asked him to not see the kids and have no contact with the kids, and he says that he was invited to leave the home and think about the way he had treated his wife. And he's going to say this a lot. It's weird. I was invited to leave the home. It's so bizarre. He could have said she removed me. He could have said she kicked me out. He could have said she asked me to leave and I respected her request. Or she asked me to leave and so not to make a scene in front of the children who I love, I did, but then I wasn't allowed back and I couldn't see my children. He could have said a million things, but instead he says, I was invited to leave the home. It goes back to this tendency that Kevin, Frankie, and anyone affiliated with Ruby and Jodi have of talking in circles and not giving straight answers to straight questions.
And how long had you and Ruby been married before?
We were married in 2000.
So about 22 years?
When we separated, we were going on 22 years. Yes.
Okay. And during your marriage, how was disciplining your kids? How would you discipline your kids?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
So Kevin doesn't want to say how he would discipline the kids because he knows that even when he lived in that house and even when they were filming daily content for the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, those kids weren't being treated well.
Have you been since separated or since they lived here in the city of Ivins? Have you communicated with your wife regarding like discipline with your kids or their care or their physical well-being?
No.
So is she doing this on her own and just telling you how your kids are?
She's not telling me anything about the kids.
Kevin said that not only is he not able to see the kids, but Ruby wasn't even telling him anything about their health and well-being. And you tell me, what kind of father would accept that and be okay with that for a month, much less a year?
Who's this female Jodi that your wife lives with? Do you know a female named Jodi?
She is a therapist and a life coach, I know. And she's...
Do you respect her?
Do I respect her? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she's a very honest, truthful person, yes.
Okay.
Remember what he says about Jodi during this interview, because he says that he respects her. He says that she's a very honest, truthful person. At this time, at the end of August, after Jodi and Ruby are arrested, and Kevin realizes that something's going on with his kids, that they've been abused, he doesn't seem to have any issues with Jodi Hildebrandt. He respects her. She's a very honest and truthful person.
You place value on Jodi?
I don't know what that means.
Like, do you value what she says and how she treats? Is your wife a client of hers? Is your wife a partner of hers? Is your wife a roommate with her? Your kids are living in her house is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not aware of that, but I know that they've been in business for the last year filming.
Who's they?
Ruby and Jodi. They film podcasts, and so every week a podcast goes up and I listen to it. And
what's the name of it?
Connections with an X.
I'm sorry, sir, but that is not how you pronounce it. It's connexions. Get it right.
And do you support them in that role and doing that and having
Do I support them in the business?
Yeah, like do you support them and think that what they're doing is a good thing, or?
I support their business efforts. I think it's a good thing.
Are you involved with their business efforts, or?
No.
Okay. So just Ruby and Jodi. No
In
Kevin.
the business?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And were you involved in the 8 passengers account with your family?
Yes. I was in the videos, and if that's what you mean.
I briefly learned about this 2 hours ago.
So, did Ruby more so do the videos for the family?
Mm-hmm.
And how long did you guys do that for?
She started the channel in 2015, and as far as I'm aware, from the time I left, the last video she uploaded was towards the end of 2021.
Okay.
And again, I'm not aware of anything she's done since our separation. I don't visit 8 passengers anymore.
Chapter of your life that's gone.
It's a past chapter, yeah.
Oh, Kevin wasn't that involved in the 8 Passengers YouTube channel. He was just in the videos. But he certainly was involved in collecting the checks that came in. He would now prefer to forget that 8 Passengers ever existed. I'm sure you would. I'm sure we all would. I'm sure that you very much regret displaying your abusive behavior to your children to the world because you literally thought you were doing nothing wrong. Like Ruby and Kevin treated their children horribly, withheld food, taunted them, tormented them, wouldn't let them have beds. And they really, legitimately put that shit on the internet and thought people are going to praise us. They're going to be like, wow, this is a whole new game, a whole new ball game of how to parent. None of us are going to have misbehaved children ever again. Now that we have 8 passengers to teach us how to abuse our children into submission, they literally thought that the world was going to see their parenting style and say, mind blown, okay? This is the only way to parent kids from now on.
When you guys had the previous 8 Passengers YouTube channel, you guys got a lot of heat for neglect and child abuse. A lot of people commented those things on there. Why were they commenting those things?
That's a good question. We had a son who was acting out in very selfish behavior.
Is this Chad or?
Yes, this was Chad. And none of this is strange or odd. You could get on YouTube and find out all sorts of stuff on this.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Whereas the question is, what do you believe, right? Basically, it boils down to he was being very cruel and mean to his siblings that he shared a room with, and so we removed him from the room. And we said, you can sleep anywhere you want. Sleep on the couch, sleep on the pull-out bed, sleep on the floor for all we care, but you're not sleeping in that room with your brother. He chose to sleep on a beanbag. So 9 months later, he had made a lot of changes in his life. And he was ready to, and we had moved by that time. And so we had a new house, and he was ready to move into his own bedroom. Made a video about it, and in the video he mentioned something to the effect of, I've been sleeping for 9 months on a beanbag. And that is what all the uproar was about.
So it's all Chad's fault, by the way, that the 8 Passengers YouTube channel got heat, and then they got demonetized and lost sponsors and lost 90% of their income. It's all Chad's fault. And remember, it was because Chad was being cruel to his brother. Chad was not being cruel to his brother. He played an innocent prank on his brother. I think he said they were like going to Disneyland, and then he was like, psych, we're not. What? That's not cruel. I mean, is it nice? No, but they're brothers. This is what they do. My children are doing that to each other all the time. I'm not telling my son, oh, you're teasing your little sister? Well, no bed for you, buddy. What? You don't teach somebody to not be cruel by being cruel to them. And by the way, it wasn't just the beanbag story that brought negative comments to 8 Passengers YouTube content. This is Kevin minimizing what happened to his children. He's minimizing it. He's being manipulative in his own way here. He's like, I don't understand. Like, it was just he had to sleep on a beanbag. Like, we didn't even make him sleep on the beanbag. We told him he could sleep anywhere, and he chose the beanbag. We just told him he couldn't sleep in his bed. Like, what's the big deal? It was not just that, Kevin, and you very well know it. It was the brazen admittances of withholding food from their children and so much more. It was Ruby Franke holding a beloved stuffed animal in front of her young daughter and saying, like, I'm going to destroy this stuffed animal because of something you did that was wrong. The cruelness came from Ruby Franke and no one else. Probably Kevin too. I don't know. Allegedly. Don't come for me. Allegedly, I think he played his part in it while he was living there. He didn't stop her. But luckily, Jodi Hildebrandt, the good and the honest Jodi Hildebrandt, she was there to set Chad straight and even help with Kevin and Ruby's marriage. She's a jack of all trades.
Was that part of your guys' reason for separation after you guys ended 8 passengers?
Was that part of the reason? The reasons are because of ways that I treated my wife and some of my own addictions that I was working through and seeking help on with pornography.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I've made some wonderful progress.
Like, is that something you came to the realization that you needed help and weren't doing things right, or is that something that, like, Jodi helped you guys recognize that maybe Ruby needed more? I'm trying to understand her involvement in your guys' life. She's my focus, so just be honest.
I understand, and I can perceive that. Jodi and Ruby have a close relationship, and Jodi saw the need for me to get help, and frankly, I agree. The space has been exactly what I need to face, my own addictions and receive the support and help that I've needed. And so this space has been very, very good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you stated that you and Ruby had this no contact that you guys just verbally agreed upon, was that an idea given by Jodi that she recommended you guys have that space and not contact one another?
I'm not aware of that. The invitation for me to leave and take space was from my wife.
Okay. But that was while Jodi and Ruby were friends and collaborating and doing podcasts and
sure.
So this is where I do start to feel like Kevin may have been brainwashed or mentally abused to an extent, and to the extent where he was being told so often that it was better for him to be away from his family and work on his addictions, that he came to believe it. That's what happened to his children, right? That's what happened to even Russell. However, Kevin is a grown man and is going to have a little bit more mental dexterity to sort of maneuver his way around that. But I will also admit that any person, especially when the abuse is coming from somebody that you love, any person can be susceptible to this. I've been susceptible to this. I would be told terrible things about myself by my partner, and I would not believe them at first. I'd be like, no, I definitely don't do that. And no, I definitely don't feel that way. And I'm not like that. But it would happen so often. And finally, I would say to myself, well, it must be true, because let me look at the facts here, right? The facts are this person loves me. And the facts are this person is saying this stuff about me. And the facts are that he lives with me. He knows me better than anyone. Why would he tell me these things about myself if they weren't true? He loves me. He wants the best for me. He wants me to be the best I can be. You will drive yourself crazy or be driven crazy, and you'll start to think that you are this horrible person that the person you love and trust has made you out to be. So the detectives finally kind of let Kevin in on what's been happening to his 2 youngest children. and he has a weird response.
So I don't recall the exact time, but sometime before 11 o'clock today, we received a phone call from 911 on our dispatch that a 12 to 13-year-old boy was knocking on doors in a neighborhood asking for food and water, that he was severely emaciated, that he had...
What is emaciated mean?
Skinny, scrawny, malnutritioned, not enough food, not enough water to sustain life. So he had...
I'm sorry, what?
He had duct tape on his extremities, on his hands, on his ankles, and those were covering rope burns that were used to tie him down. Take a second and think about what I just said. That's the condition of your son. Given that information, your son was taken to the hospital. A warrant has been applied and granted by the Department of Child and Family Services, so no one right now is going to have access to these two children based on their physical condition. Do you understand that?
I understand.
Would you condone that behavior?
Would I condone that behavior?
I guess I just don't understand how the question, would you condone that behavior, would be so difficult for Kevin to understand. So difficult for him to process that he has to repeat it. Would I condone this behavior? Instead of just immediately saying, no, of course not. They're children. I don't condone this behavior. And pay attention, because Kevin never asks if his two youngest children are okay, at least to what I could hear. I watched the whole 45-minute interview. He does not ask about them. He doesn't inquire about their condition. He doesn't say, can I see them? Can I give them a hug? Can I at least talk to them on the phone? Let them know I love them. He hasn't seen his kids in over a year. And he's being told that they're in bad condition, hospitalized. He doesn't say, oh my God, are they all right? Is there anything I can do? Can I at least talk to them, hear their voices, let them hear my voice, comfort them? He doesn't say that, but he does seem very concerned about his wife, Ruby.
That's my job. My job is to find out your knowledge of the treatment of these
based on your
precious
description,
children.
No. But again, I don't know the details, or I don't know what's going on. But as you described that sounds horrible,
disgusting. No human being should be treated like that.
Okay.
That's my thoughts. But again, we might be different on that.
Sorry, the clip's not done, but I had to cut in again. No human should be treated this way. It's disgusting. Objectively, a true statement. And Kevin's response? Okay, yeah. What? Oof.
We're going to let you sit here for a second, okay? We're going to go out and talk. I'm not saying you're still not free to go. Are you under arrest? Absolutely not. We just have lots of questions that we need to figure out. Lots. Okay?
Okay, because...
Your children are under medical care right now.
And what does that mean?
And it means that you don't have access to them. My understanding is that they are... What is that?
They're in the custody of DCFS.
And they will be for the next 7...
There's a medical hold on them right now. So for at least the next 72 hours, based on our understanding.
At least the next 72 hours.
They're in observation. They're being watched.
DCFS is going to provide you that information, and they can better answer your questions along those lines. That's handled through them.
What's going to happen to my wife? I love my wife.
I don't know. I'm being honest with you. I don't know. Haven't had an interview with you.
I don't know if those charges against my wife.
Possibly. I think given the circumstances, that's highly appropriate, but again, I don't know your wife. I was hoping to gain some insight from you, but I don't necessarily know that that's something you wanted to...
I trust her.
A road you wanted to travel down with me, so...
And not without legal representation.
Yeah, alright, I get it.
But I love my wife, and I trust my wife. And so, I mean, this feels like getting run over by a steam truck, what you're sharing with me today.
Yeah. I can tell you're caught off guard.
I thought I was just coming here to pick up my kids, and for what, I don't know what or why, and I was planning on taking them back with me, and just...
I mean, I'd love to have a candid conversation with you, I just don't know how it's going to be received by you. I don't know you, but I can tell you my perception of how this happened.
Well,
whether you value that or not, it's...
Look, I'm interested in facts, but again, at the same time, I'm interested in all the facts.
But you understand our facts. Our facts are that you have a child that is emaciated, malnutrition, and has marks. I didn't spend any time with her. Sergeant Tobler did.
Did any of you spend time with her?
They didn't spend time with her.
I have not.
She went to... She was requested to go to the hospital along with...
Folks, I don't know what to do. Like, I want to... You realize that I have a picture of my family on my wall, and I look at it every day, and I work every day.
He has a picture of his family on the wall. He's passionate about them, just not passionate enough to ask if they're doing okay or to ask if he can see them.
So I can get back to my family and save my family. And everything you're sharing to me just sounds like a made-up story. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, it sounds like a horror movie. And I get you're all doing your jobs. I get it. I understand. And this is my life. I just want my kids. I just want my kids. I just want my family.
Okay, Chris Watts. You didn't seem to be all that concerned about your kids for the past year. And when I say Chris Watts, I don't mean it in the way of Chris Watts being a murderer, okay? Don't come for me, Kevin Frankie. Don't tell me I'll be hearing from your attorney. I mean it in the way that when his wife and children went missing, Chris Watts got up in front of the cameras and he said, I just want them back. I just want them back. I just want them back. And he just kept saying that over and over again. And in reality, we know what he did to his pregnant wife and his 2 daughters. So that's what reminded me of Chris Watts. And I stand by that statement. I don't care. I stand by it.
We want to have your family.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know why these things that you described happen. I don't know. It's almost like I want to say, I'm sorry, you must have somebody else. Because it's like, am I in the right conference room here? No. That's what I feel like. It's real, you know. I'm having a hard time accepting this and dealing with this. I mean, you're telling me that you're taking my kids from me.
Is he for real? Your wife took your kids away from you, dude, for a year, and you didn't say boo. Now law enforcement's protecting them, caring for them, healing them, and you're scandalized. You just can't believe this? It's like a horror movie. He's stunned. He's like, he can't even speak. It's a horror movie. It's like, this isn't real. Imagine how much it felt like a horror movie to Eve and Russell for the past months. You know, the kids you still haven't asked about, you dick.
I've had no reason to believe or think that there was anything going on. For all intents and purposes, I woke up this morning looking at the picture of my family and making my commitment today, as I do every day, that I'm going to live an honest, a virtuous, and a responsible life today. And what you're sharing with me just feels like a sucker punch. Like, I don't know what my plan is. My plan is to go to God.
Sure.
And to figure this out.
Right.
And I feel responsible. Separating, leaving. It hurts. I wish I was a better husband.
There it is again. Kevin's focused on how he's feeling. He's overwhelmed. He's confused. He's hurt. He says he wishes he was a better husband, not a better father. He's still focused on himself and Ruby, his wife, who he's just been told has been abusing his children. So this guy is either brainwashed to the nines, or he's just as bad a person as Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt are. Kevin Franke is going to talk to the police again. And this happened on an undisclosed date. But at this time, his tune changed. So keep in mind, from the first interview to the second, he's had time to contemplate. He's had time to talk to his lawyer. He's had time to get legal advice. And he's had time to figure out how to distance himself from the situation as much as possible. So what he's going to say in this interview, I'm sure it's all true. I'm sure it's all true. But once again, I have to keep in mind that during his first interview, for me, like, the spell would be broken once you hear that your children have been harmed physically, mentally, emotionally, in every way. Any brainwashing that you have on you, it would be shattered at that point. At least it would start to crack. But it took Kevin a little time for his tune to change. Now, in the second interview, Jodi Hildebrandt was no longer an honest, good person that he respects. In fact, he suggested that she might have had some kind of supernatural powers or something, or at the very least, she was possessed by an evil spirit. Now, this second interview is actually bananas. Kevin revealed a lot of things that were shocking and showed just how bad the situation was getting in the Franke household and what those kids had to deal with even before Eve and Russell were trapped in Jodi Hildebrandt's Ivan's work camp. Let's go through some of Kevin's claims. It's also going to introduce the religious Valo Daybell-esque motives behind what Ruby and Jodi did. So let's talk about what he said. Kevin says that there was a couple he and Ruby know. They were called the Hannahs. And the Hannahs were involved with Jodi Hildebrandt and Connections, and they were trying to convince Ruby to join the Connections organization. Kevin said that Connections was focused on healthy marriages, healthy communications, breaking unhealthy addictions, and learning the difference between lust and love. And Ruby asked him to go with her to a Connections conference in the late summer of 2019.
And my impression at that time was this is absolute craziness. This is a bunch of man-hating women that are just looking for excuses to tear down their husbands. And I mean, that's what it felt like to me when I was in there. But it was confusing because there were people that I respected a lot that were up on the stage with microphones in hand, giving testimonials of how great this was and how it changed their lives and their marriage, and like the Hannahs were among them, and so, yeah, it was confusing.
In October of 2019, Ruby and Kevin apparently went to the UK for a trip with the Hannahs, and Kevin felt that the whole objective of this trip was to convince him to join up with Connections. In January of 2020, Kevin agreed to join Jodi Hildebrandt's men's group, and he agreed to participate for 3 months. And he describes this group as sort of like an AA group or like a support group for addiction or something like that. It's just like him and 10 other dudes in a room talking about how they've hurt their families and by default hurt themselves.
So I started that men's group in 2020. And, the group, I don't know if you've ever been to like an addiction recovery group, but that's what it was. That's what it felt like. I mean, there were probably 10 men in there. It was on Zoom. All of them were like working through, various stages of like sex addiction, porn addiction, drug addiction, and it was just it was like a 12-step group, but intended just for general like addiction recovery. And I really was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I don't belong here. But everyone's like, no, come here. Like, you can learn to have a better like life and a better marriage. And so I thought, okay, whatever.
So Kevin's like, okay, I'll do this for 3 months. He did. And at the end of his 3-month period, he was challenged to sit down with his wife and talk to her about how his lustful choices had affected her negatively.
You know, to me, that was like a loaded question. I thought, I still didn't see what I had done or anything that would constitute any form of abuse or anything like that. But I did. I took the challenge and I sat down, and for 2 hours, Ruby very emotionally just shared how she felt in our marriage and how the things that I, over 20 years of marriage, asking for sex as a husband frequently, or asking her to wear lingerie or things like that, how that made her feel. And it was really emotional, and it touched me. Like, I didn't realize that she felt so strongly about that she felt so hurt by that. And so I committed that I would really give it a go. And I stayed in the men's group. And so, in that men's group, I met with Jodi every week, with the other men that were in the group.
Now, Kevin said that he felt like his marriage with Ruby was getting better and stronger throughout the summer and the fall of 2020. And this was right around the time that they were getting canceled on YouTube, losing 90% of their income overnight. There's a lot of stress happening, a lot of, online stuff happening. I get it. When you're a content creator and people are talking badly about you online, it's hard to not go and look and read everything they're saying. For anybody who is a content creator, I suggest you do not read it. Most likely it's not going to be true, or it's going to be misinterpreted or misunderstood by people who are dead set on misunderstanding you. So just don't read it. It doesn't matter. But apparently Ruby was just devouring everything, and it was stressing her out. And she was going through a very hard time. So she turned to Jodi Hildebrandt for emotional support and guidance. Not her husband, but Jodi Hildebrandt.
So at that time, Ruby was really distraught. And she was looking for support. She was looking for someone who would understand her, who would validate her, and she found that in Jodi. All the stuff she did with Chad was because of Jodi, and so it makes sense that she would go to Jodi, for emotional support when she felt like her world was burning down. In the meantime, I felt like our marriage was getting stronger. It felt better. Like we didn't fight as much. Even though we were having less sex, it felt more connecting, and it was just. I thought, wow, this is great. This is great. And I was happy to be the guy up on the stage. That started sometime in late 2020. Or the fall of 2020, there would be a conference, and Ruby would say, I thought we were just attending it, but then she'd say, hey, they wanted us to get up and tell our story, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I get up and just say, I was the guy who said, I think this is a bunch of man-hating, women, but it really has made a difference in my marriage, and it really did. I believed it.
So now Kevin, who previously thought this is just a men-hating women's organization and they're trying to make us feel bad, now he thinks this whole program might actually be working. And as he bought in more and more to the Connection's promise, the utopia of a marriage and a family life that Jodi and this organization served up to these men on a silver platter, Kevin also became a mouthpiece for the organization. He became the man on stage with the microphone, giving testimonials and saying, hey, I thought that this was a joke. And I thought that, this sucked and it was just not going to work, but I just wanted to save my marriage. But hey, it ended up being the best thing we've ever done. And everything went on like this, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, until March of 2021. So they were all at a Connections conference in St. George. Who else went to conferences in St. George? Lori and Chad. They were all at a Connections conference in St. George, Utah. And they went out to lunch with Jodi afterwards. And it was the Hannahs, the Frankies, and other people who were being trained to be mental fitness coaches, like Ruby. Can you imagine Ruby? Ruby Frankie being a mental fitness coach. I guess if they say you can't do, then you should teach, right? But I don't know if it applies in this situation where you're trying to help people with their mental fitness and your mental fitness is at a zero. You have zero mental fitness. So all of these people, basically the higher ups, the people closest to Jodi, like her apostles, sitting at either of her side at the Last Supper, they all went out to lunch with Jodi. And it was there that Jodi opened up to the women in a private conversation, Kevin said. And Jodi told the women that she believed she was being tormented and haunted by shadow figures every night. And Kevin says, the way she described it was terrifying. It sounded creepy. So because all of these crazy things were happening in Jodi's house, because not only is she seeing shadow figures, but things are moving by themselves. Like she's got poltergeist all over this joint. They're throwing things. They're slamming things in the basement, slamming cabinets shut, just harassing her. She can't sleep, right? So Jodi needs help. She can't stay in her Ivan's house. She's got to get out. So a few days later, the Hannahs, remember the couple that Ruby and Kevin know, they brought Jodi to live with them. But this only lasted for 6 weeks because they were hoping to help her, allegedly, but it didn't end well.
And this is where, I don't know what happened, but I do know that there's two different sides of stories. They tried to introduce her to a new cult lady that the Hannahs were getting into. So they wanted to merge their cults into one, apparently.
They referred to it as a cult at the time?
Oh, no. No one in a cult says, I'm in a cult.
Right. I was wondering. But from your perspective, it looks like two cult leaders merging together.
From where I stand now, absolutely. Yeah. According to Jodi, she was held against her will for 6 weeks and was kidnapped, and she escaped and got out. According to the Hannahs, after 6 weeks of Jodi stabbing herself with forks and knives, cutting herself, and wanting to commit suicide and trying to seduce the husband of the family, they kicked her out. I don't know what's the truth. Maybe a little bit of both, I don't know. But the point is, somewhere around mid-April, Jodi was back in her home in Ivan's, and she was a hot mess.
So listen, I don't know the Hannahs, and I really don't even know Jodi, but it sounds more likely that the Hannah's version of events is the true version, because why would they keep her hostage in their house? And if they did, why didn't she go to the police? Why would they do that, Jodi? You're not that cool, okay? People don't want to lock you up so that they can be with you and you can't leave them. So Jodi leaves the Hannah's home. She goes back to Ivan's, but she's not doing well there. Everything's still happening. So Jodi called Ruby Frankie for help, and this pleased Ruby, according to Kevin, because Ruby had always been jealous that Jodi was closer to the Hannahs than Jodi was to Ruby.
They had a better relationship with Jodi than she did. Ruby, and this goes back to her childhood. She wanted to be the best friend. She wanted to be the most liked. She wanted to be the one that everybody knew. And so it hurt her that she felt like she was being excluded from what was going on at the Hannah's house. And then she'd say, why so many secrets? And the Hannahs would say, it's not secret, it's sacred. And when the time's right, you can know too.
So Kevin talks about May of 2021 being the first time he'd ever been to Jodi's place in Ivan's, and it surprised him when he pulled up because of her house and the land and, how large it was and how expensive everything looked. She's got a custom, panic room in her basement built to her specs. There's 3 garages. There's all this land. This house is huge. It's $3.5 million. And he wondered, how could a therapist afford to live in this way? Well, we are going to get some insight into that, what Jodi was doing for this money that she was making that allowed her to live this lavish lifestyle. But while Kevin and Ruby were there, Jodi opened up to them about her troubles and what was happening to her. And Kevin says it doesn't make sense now talking about it, but he believed her because he witnessed some of it.
I gotta say, I'm a smart guy. I'm an engineer. Designed and helped build some really big stuff. I'm a college professor. I can't explain some of the stuff that happened while we were there. Like crashes in the basement while we were talking upstairs. And plates in the kitchen just
flying off by themselves, like full speed, smashing on the wall and falling to the floor by themselves. I can't explain it, but I saw it with my own eyes, and I don't have any way to explain it other than there's some crazy shit going on. Ruby was convinced that we could intervene and help Jodi. I didn't want a thing to do with it. I tried to get the bishop involved and say, hey, go to the priesthood and the church and all that stuff. Just go to your support network. But Ruby continued to be like, no, we can help. She doesn't want that. Could you imagine what would happen to her reputation if this got out and stuff? Let's help her. So we went down a couple more times between May and August, but it reached the point where in August, her bishop at the time, the guy who's down there in Kayenta named Scott Galbraith, he's not our bishop anymore, but he was going over there every night, and he'd be there for 4 hours, and he'd be like, I'm fighting evil spirits, I'm casting demons out, I'm crazy stuff going on. And finally he got to the point where he's like, I can't do this anymore. There needs to be some sort of resolution. It was at that point that they said, why don't you take her up to your house? And I was like, oh, hell no. I don't want this in my house. But I was beaten over the head with it. That's really insensitive. She's done so much to help our family, and you're being selfish, and she has needs, and come on, it won't be for long. And so I relented, and I was like, okay.
So now Jodi Hildebrandt is living with the Frankie family in Springville, and the second she showed up, chaos ensued, and Jodi brought her demons with her, literally, figuratively, in every way you could mean it.
And it turned into just crazy house. The moment she showed up in my house, just the weirdest crap started happening. Lights turning on and off, sounds of people walking in walls, and sounds like footprints going up walls and across the ceiling, and stuff floating around, and it was weird, and I hated it. And I became the resident exorcist. That was the title I came up with myself. I thought it was kind of funny, but it was my job to go and give her blessings whenever she started to go into a trance and go into possession, and which started to be a lot. And Ruby would go up and check on her. It started every 4 hours at night, and then it moved every 2 hours at night, then it moved every hour at night, and then at some point Ruby said, you know what, I'm just going to start sleeping in there, and if I need you, I'll come down and get you. That's kind of weird, but okay. And that was that. They started sleeping in the same bed.
Kevin says, that's kind of weird. And yeah, you think it's weird? It's weird, dude. It's weird that your wife is sleeping in the bed with a woman, a grown-ass woman that is her friend. It's weird, right? It's like Kevin and Ruby suddenly had a newborn baby who would wake up every hour crying, and Jodi was supposed to be helping Ruby and Kevin with their marriage, but instead she moves into their house, takes all of Ruby's attention and time, brings her out of her marital bed, and basically has Ruby place her husband and children in a secondary role of importance in her life. And you'd think that at that point, Kevin would have been like, does this woman really want to help us? Because if she wanted to help us, I don't see how not having me and my wife sleep in the same bed at night is doing that. I don't see how your constant trances and hauntings and shadow figures interrupting a peaceful night's rest in our house are helping our relationship and our marriage get better. But it didn't stop there, because in September, Jodi started going into trances where she would see God and receive messages from him. Okay, Lori Vallow.
She would get together with Pam Botcher. Ruby, Pam, and Jodi would get together and do these interventions. That's what they call them. So they'd just go up and lock themselves in a room for 4 or 5 hours, and then they'd come out and they'd all just be on cloud nine, and Ruby would share with me like she had this amazing vision, and I wrote it and recorded it all down, and we have a work to do from God, and you're part of it, and the bishop's part of it, and we're all part of bringing all this stuff to the world.
Just going back, you said that she was having like these visions, like were you ever privy enough to understand or be told what those visions were?
A couple of them.
What were the two things?
So like one of them, she was walking along the beach with Jesus, and Jesus challenged her to go walk on the water, and it was a whole lesson on walking on the water. Another, she would walk with Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother, and she learned about, she had a pet lion in heaven named Charles. I don't know why I never forgot that name, but it was like this massive lion, and she got to ride the lion and learned that, all about who she was and this pet lion and all. There was another one where there was a lot of satanic ones where when she would go into possession mode, she would talk in like different voices. It was really creepy, but the voices would say, she's ours, we're not letting go. She is Satan's bride. She's mine. I'm going to marry her. So if she was faking it, she believed that she was trying to, or Satan wanted her as her bride. So it was, and it continued like that until I wanted to move on with life. And I would call it dragging my heels. So that was around October. And Jodi flipped out because during one intervention, Chad was in the backyard with a bunch of friends. And it was my job to keep all the kids contained in the basement watching movies or playing video games. And I took the dog on a walk, and I thought they were done, but they weren't done. And Chad had all his high school friends over in the backyard. Jodi flipped out. She was ready to come back to Ivan's on her own that night, and Ruby and Pam talked her into staying. But that was the first night where Ruby said, I want a separation from you. And it was an in-home separation.
Do you think that Lori, because they both spend time in Utah, right? Lori Vallow spent time in Utah, definitely. And they're both in the LDS church. Do you think Jodi Hildebrandt and Lori Vallow knew each other? Like, did they run in the same circles? I have to make a note of this because I really want to look it up. I guarantee you they were at some of the same conferences. So once again, we look into what is Jodi doing there. She's there because she needs help, but she's also promised to help Kevin be a better husband to his wife, Ruby. And suddenly, instead of their relationship and their marriage improving, Ruby wants to separate from Kevin because he wasn't helping Jodi by keeping the kids quiet while she was receiving her transmissions from God. How do you know they're from God, by the way? Like, how do people know that they're hearing messages from God instead of, like, I don't know, Satan, right? How do you know it's God and not like an archangel? How do you know it's God and not, schizophrenia or a mental health condition? How do you know? And suddenly, Kevin was now living under a strict set of rules in his own home.
Basically, there were all these rules now placed on me. Like, I could leave when I wanted, but I couldn't come back until Ruby gave me permission. I couldn't come into the kitchen to eat until Ruby gave me permission. And the upstairs where Jodi roamed was completely off limits. I couldn't go upstairs anymore in my own house. And there would be, Ruby would dictate all of the terms of how our interactions would be, when we would talk, and that was hard. And it was during that time that I really became, I would say, dependent upon Ruby. Like, if she said a kind word to me, like, my whole day was made, right? And So that separation continued all the way up until the holidays, maybe the last week of December, first week of January.
The second week of January, Jodi Hildebrandt went home to Ivan's, but the damage was done. And Jodi was completely enmeshed with Ruby. And Ruby was completely focused on the work that God had given them to do for him in his name on earth. And Kevin thought it was batshit crazy. He didn't want Ruby to put all of her eggs into Jodi's basket. He sensed that there was some kind of manipulation and maybe some coercive control tactics being used on his wife at the hands of Jodi Hildebrandt. He thought that maybe Jodi was using Ruby, or at the very least, Ruby would lose sight of the things that were important during her path of being Jodi's disciple.
Ruby, you have a reputation, you have a multi-million-dollar business, you have a brand, and you are just giving it away. She wanted to legally, work with Jodi's attorney to basically give Jodi 8 passengers and become an employee of Connections. So basically the contract was Ruby gives Jodi everything and Ruby gets nothing in return. Our manager, our YouTube manager at the time was like, red flags. Like, I don't know how to tell you. She is scamming you. Ruby fired him. And I was like, I believe our manager. I think he's right. And Ruby started threatening me with another separation. And just like, this isn't about money. This is about doing God's work. So we continued in that dynamic for the next 6 or 7 months until she went on a trip with Jodi and Pam down to Arizona. And I think they, when I read her journal, she went into Mexico or something and bought drugs or something, like prescription drugs for the emergency kits. And when she came back from that trip, before she even brought the bags into the house, she pulled me in and said, I want to talk with you. And that's when she asked me to leave.
So on July 20th, Ruby gets back home with all these prescription medications she'd purchased in Mexico. I wonder where those were at when she was slathering her son's open wounds with honey and paprika. Where was the prescription medication for the emergency kits, Ruby? And so Ruby then tells Kevin when she gets home with all of this Mexican prescription medication, she says, you got to leave. I want you to leave. And Kevin says this was July 20th of 2022. This is the last time he saw his children. And at this time, Kevin was still in the men's group, but he said his dynamic with Jodi and the men in the group had changed. And he was suddenly treated as less than, as someone who couldn't be trusted, as someone who was potentially now an enemy instead of an ally.
Instead of being like one of the top people that helped run groups and helped support, all of a sudden I felt like I got knocked to the bottom. And Jodi was just piling on me every week in the men's groups. And the other men just do whatever Jodi does. If Jodi piles on somebody, they all pile on. If Jodi praises somebody, they all praise. And so it really felt like a pack of dogs. And Jodi was the alpha. And whoever she sicked the dogs on, they would go. Whoever she praised, the dogs would just lick them up and down. And that's how these groups went. And so once I was in separation, every week was just hell, psychological hell. And Jodi was running it. Everything was on Zoom. I knew that the only way I would ever get back into my house was I had to get Jodi's approval. If I didn't get Jodi's approval, I would never get Ruby's approval. But it felt like an impossible task because no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to track better, be truthful and not be selfish, every week it was like, you're being manipulative, you're being selfish, you're lying, you're hiding something, you're still hiding stuff. And I really started to question my sanity, honestly.
So what it sounds like to me is Jodi got her flying monkeys to help her gaslight the shit out of Kevin Frankie and make him question what he believed he knew to be true. She put him in a position where he would be given certain goals to reach, but the goalpost would constantly be moved. And that is frustrating. Once again, as somebody who's gone through that, that's frustrating. That is enough to drive you crazy because Kevin could never make progress. He could never feel that he was competent in anything he was doing. He could never feel that his eventual goal, which he claims was to get back home and be with his family, that he wasn't getting any closer to it. He wasn't feeling like that goal was in reach. That's very harmful to somebody's psyche. Not only that, but Jodi removed all forms of support system that Kevin might have had, leaving him completely alone with no one to turn to, no one to vent to, no one to trust, because if he said the wrong thing, it would all be reported back to Jodi.
You know, Jodi had an approved list of men that I could make phone calls to, and it was basically 3 men. But 2 of those, well, no, all 3 of those 3 men were like, we don't want to do phone calls with you anymore because you're being manipulative. And I'm like, well, who told you that? Well, Jodi did. So I was completely cut off. And I, you know, if I went to my church leaders, I was seeking enablement. If I went to my family, I was seeking enablement. If I went to anybody, I was seeking enablement. And so it felt like a no-win. I felt trapped. And that's where I was all the way up until the last week of July, when Jodi called me one day out of the blue and just said, I don't understand why you're not getting it. You're not changing. I don't get it. So I've been asking God what to do, and God told me that you need to have complete solitude with God.
Become a monk.
Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I don't want you to come to men's group anymore. And I don't want you to do phone calls with any of the men. And I'm like, well, then who am I going to talk with? Who's going to support me? God will. You need to learn to go to God. And so I'm just like, there's nobody. You're just, I mean, I'm going to be completely cut off. And she's like, no, you'll have God. And so that was the last week of July. And that was my last interaction and contact with Jodi.
So while Kevin's being cut off from everyone and everything, he's also dealing with Ruby, who's suddenly asking him to sign papers, but she's asking him to just trust her. Don't actually read or look at what you're signing. Can you just trust me?
Like Ruby wanted to meet in a parking lot and wanted me to sign over titles of documents. Like the 2 of our cars wanted me to sign them over to her name. But I was like, okay, you know, I'm just not, I'm in total compliance mode at this point. Just like, I'm a good husband, you see, you can trust me. And so whatever she asked, like, sign over the cars to me, no questions, just okay. And then another thing, she was like, I might want to do an investment, but I will need your signature. Do you trust me enough that I could get your signature if I wanted to pursue my own investment? Yeah, sure. Whatever you say.
How big of an investment? What's she talking about? Or did she tell you?
She never did, and I never signed anything. She never brought anything to me. But when I returned to the house, everything was packed up, and a neighbor came over and said she asked for the HOA rules and mentioned to him that she wanted to rent the house out. Which I was like, yeah, are you kidding me? And she wanted to sell the house, but couldn't because my name's on the mortgage. And I think that's what she was talking about, of, will you sign something if I just put it in front of you? And you know what? I probably would have. Like, that's how messed up I was.
I'm glad you didn't.
Me too. That would have been disastrous. Yeah. But I can't describe to you what torture and hell it was to live an entire it was more than a month really, in complete isolation, believing that I was like evil and, I mean, manipulative and lying and selfish, and that I had abandoned my family, and that I was more interested in my selfishness than my family.
Kevin was told that if he really wanted to be better and healed, he would be. So the fact that he wasn't improving meant that he truly didn't want to improve.
The last communication I had with Jodi was the last week of July. It might have been like the first couple days of August, but just
shortly before we made contact with you.
Yeah,
or you made contact with us.
A month before.
Yeah.
Okay. So for that whole month, my life was literally wake up, exercise, go to work, pretend everything's okay, come home, do connections like workbooks and read scriptures and try to strip selfishness out of my life. Like, go to bed, wake up, repeat every day. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, I was so upside down. And my plan was in 6 months, I get to reach back out to Jodi again, and she'll let me back in the group, and then I can prove.
You had communication with Ruby maybe 3 or 4 times, but each time, or at least on some of the occasions you spoke to her, she's telling you that everything's blissful, we're doing well, everything's so much better without you.
Oh, that would be communicated to me by Jodi every week, and the men's groups too. And it was just like, you're abandoning your family. And it always hurt so bad, because it's like, I want to be with my family so bad. What do you mean I'm abandoning them? If you wanted to be with your family, you would change. You would stop being selfish. But you keep being selfish, so you want it. And it just felt like, well, how do I stop wanting it then? It's like, then you must change. Well, how do I change? Well, you gotta want it. Well, what? So how do I want it? You gotta change. It's this like
perpetual cycle.
Yeah, there's no. I tried to find my way into that cycle, and it felt like, have you ever had a dream where there's like a problem you're trying to solve, but you can't solve it, and how frustrating you feel? That's what my life felt like. And as I'm looking back and I'm realizing there was no solution. There was, you either had Jodi's approval or you didn't. I wasn't doing anything different than the other men in the group, but they got her approval, so they were praised and they were repenting and they were doing everything right. I, on the other hand, was manipulative and selfish and enabling and all blah, 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 blah. And she became like the arbiter of truth, the arbiter of forgiveness, God's own mouthpiece. And it was just messed up.
Now, what you're hearing here, what happened to Kevin, this is called circular logic, and it is a manipulation technique that abusers use, that MLMs use, that cults use. A circular argument is basically a bad faith, incorrect argument that tries to prove itself using its own conclusion as evidence. So, for example, I could look at you, like let's say we're coworkers, and I say, hey, our boss is the best person for this job because she was promoted to the position of being our boss. Therefore, she's the best person for the job. This is considered a logical fallacy, because when you make this type of argument, you're not supporting your claim with logic or facts. Instead, you're using your claim to prove that the reasons for the claim are true. Even the explanation of a circular argument sounds circular, because that's how crazy they are. That's how crazy, frustrating, and maddening they are. Circular arguments are fueled by one person's emotional reasoning, and they also trigger the other person's, the victim's, natural reaction as a human to justify, argue, defend, and explain themselves. And this is known by the acronym JADE. It is a common mistake made by codependent trauma-bonded victims to participate in this jading in an effort to avoid or end pointless conflicts, and circular arguments with a toxic person. Now, what is the toxic person's goal in using these frustrating, maddening circular arguments? Well, they have a lot of reasons. They have a lot of goals. They want to bait you into conflict and elicit an emotional response, which can then be distorted and twisted around and used against you, whether it's with your support systems, your family, your friends, the law, judges, law enforcement people, in a legal sense, in a personal sense. They want to use your words against you, to isolate you from everyone. Sometimes they do it just because they're bored and they want attention. Toxic people, narcissists, sociopaths, they get bored very easily because they don't have an identity. You are their identity. And so when they do get bored, they crave stimulation and they get dopamine from getting attention from you. And they're like little kids in that way. They don't care if it's negative attention, positive attention. They just want attention. And so they will pick a fight with you and walk into your office. Let's say you're working in the middle of the day. They walk into your office. You're in a good mood. You're working. You're banging away. You're focused, laser focused in. They're like, hey, can I just talk to you really quick about something? And you're like, sure. Thinking it's going to be a 5-minute conversation, if that. And then 90 minutes later, you're sobbing. You're banging your head against the wall. You don't know what the hell happened. You don't know which way is up. They love that. It gives them such a thrill. Toxic people like to create problems where there are none, and they do this to entertain themselves. And these toxic people also sometimes just like to inflict pain on their victims, but this is a method of entertaining themselves. This circular argument tactic is often used to create feelings of fear, obligation, guilt, and confusion in the victim, which are the emotions that usually keep people stuck in abusive relationships, right? Guilt, fear, obligation, confusion. These things are the glue that holds trauma-bonded people together because you're confused. You're questioning yourself. You don't trust your instinct anymore. Once again, this person loves me. They care about me. Why would they tell me things that aren't true? Why can't we get on the same page? It must be me. Circular arguments are all about conditioning you to give up and let your abuser have their way. They're about keeping you distracted so that you can't focus on the real issues because you're so focused on avoiding another argument that you know you can never win. And as I said, circular logic is used to deceive people in cults and MLMs. This is when circular logic is used, when you're trying to manipulate somebody, when you're trying to get them to join a cult, when you're trying to get them to sign up for an MLM. Whew, that was a tongue twister. MLM. When you're trying to abuse them and have them allow you to abuse them. They want you to let them continue their abuse on you. They don't want you to wake up and realize what's going on. They don't want you to leave. They want you to be so trauma bonded to them. They will cause your pain, but then they'll also be the ones to comfort you once you're in pain. It's crazy. And it looks like this is exactly what was happening to Kevin Frankie. But once again, how innocent is he? Is he kind of just waking up to this, which is possible? You know, once you get away from the toxic situation, sometimes you'll have memory gaps and you'll start remembering things that happened to you as, you know, you have distance from your abuser, if you can go no contact. And I mean, I don't know if that's the case because Kevin really didn't go no contact from his wife, Ruby. As we're going to find out, he talked to her while she's in jail. But this video is already going to be super long, and we haven't even gotten to the jailhouse phone calls yet or Ruby's journals yet. So we will continue on and wrap up in part 2, and you won't want to miss it because this information, especially the journals, it's going to give us a lot of insight into what happened to the kids and into why Ruby felt that what she was doing was right. But before we go, let's do Stephanie's Small Business Showcase. Woohoo! Today's small business comes to us from Lye Ceramics, a pottery company owned by Liza Furman in her home studio based out of Massachusetts. All the pieces are beautiful, honestly. They're colorful, they're fun-inspired, completely handmade using a pottery wheel and hand-building techniques. And Lye Ceramics believes that every object in your life should be more than just functional. They should be beautiful as well, even the mugs you drink your morning coffee out of. And I agree with that. You know I do. Lye Ceramics is a woman of color-owned business, and the items are available in several retail locations in New England as well as local markets throughout the year. You can explore what they have to offer on their website, which I've linked below in the description box. I've also linked their Instagram and TikTok accounts for you to follow. I'm a sucker for ceramics, okay? I don't know if you all know, I'm a sucker for ceramics. And I have a whole set of Harry Potter ceramic mugs that were made for me by actually a subscriber who's very talented. And I give my endorsement to Lye Ceramics because these items are beautiful. And not only that, they're interesting and they're unique. I love the curvy grid mugs and the Del Rey mugs because they look so cool and so artsy, so different than anything I've ever seen. And she even has tumblers with little holes for the straw to fit through, which is so cute and functional. So go check out Lye Ceramics, send her some love and support from the Harlowe family, tell her I sent you, and buy a mug or two if you have somebody you know would love them, if you would love them, if you're able to do it. We support each other here, and we try to support each other in every possible way we can, and you guys have always supported me so much through everything, and I'll never forget that. So before we leave, like the video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, subscribe if you haven't already, okay? The amount of people that are watching my videos who aren't subscribing is going up. Like the non-subscribers are going up. And I wonder if it's just because people don't subscribe anymore. Like YouTube is changing, but subscribe so that you're notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe. And I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
It's getting you slowly, so you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings, blood